Now let us start with our second part of regional circulation. So first we have your endothelin. So let us know about this. So endothelin is actually a constrictor, that is a vasoconstrictor. It decreases the lumen size. So it is mainly released from the damaged endothelium. So whenever the endothelium is damaged, it mainly releases the endothelin. So endothelin is actually a large 21 amino acid peptide, and this is released mainly when the endothelium is damaged due to crushing because of any injury, any accident, and injecting the traumatizing chemicals into the blood vessels. So because of all these conditions, endothelium damage, so whenever it damage, it immediately releases the endothelin. Remember that it is a large 21 amino acid peptide. So after the damage of endothelium, the release of endothelin leads to vasoconstriction and prevent the extensive bleeding from the arteries. Vasoconstriction means it because of vasoconstriction, the blood flow is decreased. So when the blood flow is decreased, it is nothing but in turn leading to the decrease in the blood flow, decrease in the bleeding into the blood vessels. So after the damage of endothelin, release of yeah, we have done this. So the drugs which block the endothelin receptors are mainly used to treat the pulmonary hypertension. Because you can understand, the drugs which block the endothelin receptors are used to treat pulmonary hypertension, because when the vessels get constricted, the blood flow decreases but the blood pressure increases. So now to treat the pulmonary hypertension, if we block the endothelin, the blood vessels always get dilated, so that there is more blood flow but decreased blood pressure, so that leading to decrease in pulmonary hypertension. But it is not used to lower the blood pressure in patients with, yeah, here you can understand, in pulmonary hypertension we are using to decrease the blood pressure. Then why can't someone, you may get the doubt like, why can't we use to this to decrease the blood pressure in patients with systemic arterial hypertension? But this is not used here, so that's why we need to remember, but it is not used in lowering the blood pressure in patients with systemic arterial hypertension. Next, let us see the long-term regulation of blood flow mainly. So, in arterial pressure, mainly between 50 and 250 millimeters of mercury, they have the little effect on the rate of local blood flow. We are talking about long-term regulation. Long-term regulation only have the little effect when the arterial pressure is between 50 and 250 millimeters of mercury. So, if the tissue is overactive chronically, overactive means it's like having high metabolism. So when the tissue is having high metabolism, of course it requires more oxygen, more nutrients, and arterioles and capillary vessels increase both in size and also in number within few weeks to match the needs of the tissue. Because you can see now it is having very high activity, so to match this high activity, now we need to increase both the number of the blood vessels and also we need to increase the size of the blood vessels, mainly by vasodilation, right? So, unless the circulatory system has become pathological or too old to respond. So, only in this cases it may not respond, like in pathological conditions like some diseases related to blood vessels, or whenever the blood vessel is too old. In older people it may take, that's why, in older people when they get some kind of any health problem, it will go into major problem because their compensatory mechanisms are not so much better when compared with the younger people. So if the metabolism is increase the vascularity. Is here the word increase the vascularity is nothing but increase in production of more blood vessels. That is a process which is called as angiogenesis. In the name you can say angio means new blood vessels, genesis means production. So production of new blood vessels is mainly taking place whenever the metabolism is increased, and of course in turn, reverse vice versa, whenever there is decrease in metabolism, decrease in vascularity. So mainly in neonates, that is in younger small infants, the vascularity will adjust to match the almost exactly needs of tissue for the blood flow. But whereas in older tissues or in older people, the vascularity frequently lags far behind needs of a tissue, because as we said, as we discussed before, so increase in vascularity in high altitude animals, we also see sometimes in high altitude animals, because they require more oxygen, more blood supply. We also have an interesting experiment here. Let us discuss this. So if if neonates are put in an increase in oxygen tent, means some tent is there where there is lot of oxygen. So we had did an experiment, like we put so small infants in that oxygen tent. So because of excess oxygen, they cessate the new vascular. Cessation means completely they stop the growth of new vascular system in retina of premature baby's eye, and this lead to causing of this has led to the degeneration of small vessels. And if the infant is took out from the oxygen tent, so this is the case till now when the infant is put in the oxygen tent, because of excess oxygen there is a low growth of vascular system. Whereas if now the infant is taken out from this oxygen tent, then there is explosive overgrowth of new vessels to make up the sudden decrease in oxygen. So now if we take out this person from this this infant from oxygen rich area to oxygen poor area, then what his body does is to compensate this. Now his body produces excess of vascular vessels grow out from the retina, like no extremely they are formed that now they are growing out from the retina into the vitreous humor of such a large growth causing blindness, and this is called as retrolental fibroplasia. Of course it will cause blindness because now the vessels have come out into the vitreous humor causing blindness, mainly called as retrolental fibroplasia. So oxygen is required for the long term regulation of blood flow. Even this is important point, oxygen is required. So important vascular growth factors, let us see what are those growth factors. You can see VAGF is a vascular endothelial growth factor, we have fibroblast growth factor, we have platelet derived growth factor, and angiogenin present in inadequate. So these are all the growth factors which you can find mainly in inadequate blood flow tissues, like the tissues which are mainly ischemic, in that tissues you can found this because they are activated there too, leading to the growth of new vessels, that is leading to angiogenesis. And also you can find them in tissues which are having low oxygen, low nutrients, and also so now let us see the steroid hormone. So steroid hormone act opposite to these growth factors, like you can see these growth factors are leading to growth of a new vessel, whereas steroid hormone lead to dissolution of this vascular cells, so that they may also destroy the uh, new blood vessels. And angiostatin is a fragment of plasminogen which mainly inhibits the angiogenesis, and endostatin is formed from breakdown of collagen type, mainly you can see 10 7 17. So this is mainly used to arrest the vasculogenesis, especially in tumors, so you can use it like a treatment. So angiostatin, endostatins are given to the patient where we need to drop, we need to decrease the development of blood vessels, mainly in the tumors, and also to prevent the blood flow to them and stop their rapid growth. So if the blood flow and the nutrients supplied to the tumor are low, then it may lead to somewhat decrease in the tumor. So vascularity is our mainly determined by the maximum blood flow need but not the average blood flow need. So always remember, vascularity means new blood vessels are always formed only whenever there is maximum blood flow needed. So like in extensive exercises, all these conditions, whenever only we need the maximum blood flow, only then the vascularity is increased, like formation of new blood vessels is increased. In normal average need, these are short term and also are local factors and also auto regulation, they can just solve the problems. But whenever we need lot of blood flow in a maximum blood flow need, only then the vascularity is activated. So when the arteries or veins are blocked, the new channels develop. These are called as collateral vessels. So multiple small channels are formed, especially in rest. If they are formed, then it is called as acute. In excessive uh, in exercise, if they are formed, then they are called as long term. Acute in rest, they are like in normal. So multiple small channels are formed whenever the arteries or veins are blocked. So whenever these arteries or veins are blocked, in rest mainly they are normal, but whereas in exercise you can see their size is increased because it's a long term action. In long term action the size may increase and even the number of vessels may increase, whereas in acute action you can see they are like in normal condition, just they have vasodilation or constriction. So by the age of 60, the small coronary arteries may block, but the people of age of 60 are unaware because the collaterals are naturally formed. But if the coronary insufficiency, that is if the failure of this coronary system is like so high, it is in dangerous situation, then it may lead to heart attack. So always remember, in age of 60 everyone may have the blocks in the coronary artery, but because of the collaterals they are unaware of it. But if this coronary insufficiency is very high or severe in that person, then it may lead to, of course, pursue the heart attack. So humoral control. So what is this humoral control? By hormonal local factors like it may lead to vasoconstriction. We have vasoconstricted agents, vasodilator agents. So vasoconstricted agents mainly norepinephrine, epinephrine, angiotensin 2, vasopressin, and vasodilator agents are bradykinin, histamine. These all we are familiar with already. Once again, let us see what are the important functions. What are those? So norepinephrine and epinephrine, you can see among these both, the norepinephrine is a strong vasoconstrictor, whereas epinephrine can cause the dilation in few tissues. So you can see this is also a constrictor, but not so important constrictor. It is because it can also do vasodilation in few tissues. Like example, you can take in coronary arteries whenever there is increase in high heart rate. So whenever the heart rate is increased, in coronary artery, it may lead to vasodilation, so that the blood flow may increase. So this is a case because of epinephrine. And sympathetic sympathetic stimulation may lead to direct release of norepinephrine or indirect release. So whenever it is directly releases, you can say it leads to increase in heart rate and vasoconstricted. Indirectly, how it is released? Because sympathetic nervous system go and stimulate the adrenal medulla. So because of stimulating the adrenal medulla, from an adrenal medulla, norepinephrine can release. So like this, the sympathetic nervous system may directly or indirectly increase the norepinephrine. Next, we'll go on to angiotensin 2. So 1 millionth of gram of angiotensin 2 only can increase the blood pressure by 50 millimeters of mercury or even more. So you can see it's a very powerful vasoconstrictor. So constrictor means it always try to increase the total peripheral resistance mainly by constricting the arterioles and thereby decreasing the blood flow and also decreasing the nitric oxide and decreasing the sodium and water retention. You can understand whenever the sodium water retention is decreased, means lot of it is lost in urine, means the blood volume is decreased, so thus this in turn leading to increase in blood pressure. So remember that angiotensin 2 leads to increase in blood pressure. And next we have our vasopressin. This is also called as antidiuretic hormone, ADH, and it is more powerful than angiotensin 2 in the case of our vasoconstriction. So after the severe hemorrhage, whenever the ADH can increase the BP to like about 60 millimeters of mercury or normal, that's why we have said that the vasopressin is greater than angiotensin 2, because you can see angiotensin 2 can only increase the blood pressure to 50 millimeters of mercury, whereas the vasopressin can lead to increase of blood pressure like 60 millimeters of mercury. Also sometimes it may bring it back to the normal. So what vasopressin do? It mainly does increase in water reabsorption. So they are like opposite. You can see angiotensin 2 decrease the reabsorption, whereas vasopressin lead to increase in reabsorption. So this in turn leads to increase in blood pressure. Now let us focus on vasodilators. So vasodilators, first we have our bradykinin. Bradykinin is a powerful dilator. So kinin is a small polypeptide which is split by enzymes from alpha to globulins in plasma or tissue fluids. So we also have kallikrein. Kallikrein is present in blood and body fluids, but it is mostly inactive. But it gets activated mainly by migration of blood and also due to any inflammation reaction. So this kallikrein mainly act on alpha 2 globulin and release the kinin, and this is called as kallidin. And this kallidin is in turn converted by enzymes to bradykinin. So this is how bradykinin is formed from this kallikrein. First kallikrein act on alpha 2 globulin. Alpha 2 globulin release kinin. So this kinin is called kallidin. This kallidin is converted by enzymes to bradykinin. So this is how bradykinin is formed. So bradykinin stay only for few minutes. Later it is inactivated by carboxypeptidase or by some other enzymes that play role in activating angiotensin. And activated kallikrein destroyed by kallikrein inhibitor also present in our body fluids. So this bradykinin also increase the capillary permeability. Injection of just 1 you can say mcg of this bradykinin into the brachial artery increase the blood pressure six-fold and cause the local edema, because there is increase in capillary pore size. And bradykinin help to regulate the blood flow in the skin, salivary glands, and also in GIT glands. So now let us see what is histamine. Histamine, every tissue can release it whenever it gets inflamed or subject to any allergic reaction. So mainly in inflammation and allergic reactions we see the release of histamine. So histamine is mostly derived from the mast cells in the damaged tissue and also from the basophils in the blood, and this is a powerful vasodilator which mainly affects on arterioles, and like bradykinin have the ability to greatly increase the capillary porosity. Means they all lead, you can see histamine vasodilators, histamine bradykinin mainly lead to edema because they increase the capillary permeability, so that hydrostatic pressure is lot of increase and leading to final year edema. So effect on arterioles, yeah, we are done. Yes. so allowing the leakage of both fluid and plasma protein into the tissues. So many pathological conditions like arteriodilation and increase in capillary porosity produced by histamine cause the tremendous quantity to leak out, the causing finally edema. So this is prominent during allergic reactions. Mainly in our allergic reactions we see this, and also in inflammation, of course. So now let us see how the ions control our blood vessel. So mainly increase in calcium lead to vasoconstriction, because calcium leads to stimulation of smooth muscle contraction. So whenever smooth muscle contracts, it's vasoconstrict. Whereas increase in potassium leads to vasodilation, because potassium mainly inhibits the smooth muscle contraction. So magnesium also is a powerful dilator, means now you can guess it inhibits the contraction. So you can see whichever ion which is inhibiting the contraction, it leading to vasodilation. Whichever ion which leading to smooth muscle contraction, it is leading to constriction. So here you can see hydrogen ion lead to decrease in pH, so that it leads to dilation. Even decrease in hydrogen, of course, reverse of it constriction. Whereas anions like acetate and citrate cause mainly dilation, and increase in carbon dioxide concentration lead to moderate dilation, but marked dilation in brain. Only remember marked dilation, because it's like marked means limited, but normally in our body, means in all other parts, moderate dilation. So increase in carbon dioxide mainly act on the vasomotor center. It's a powerful indirect effect transmitted by the sympathetic vasoconstrictor system, and finally causing the vasoconstriction throughout the body. So by this we have completed our second part, but we have our last but this graphs. So you can see on x-axis we have mean arterial pressure, y-axis we have blood flow. You can see here, as the mean arterial pressure is keep on increasing, this is a long-term regulation, it's trying to bring it back to the normal. So this is a blood flow. You can see as the mean arterial pressure is keep on increasing, even the blood flow is keep on increasing. So you can see here, this is a blood, these are the endothelial cells. So you can see here nitric oxide which is released from the endothelial cells, soluble guanylate cyclase. In the presence of this, it converts the CGTP into CGMP, and finally this CGMP lead to relaxation or nothing but the vasodilation. So this is a vascular smooth muscle with the receptor dependent activation. You can see here, first this ENOs, because of shear stress of blood receptor dependent activation, ENOs has come here, and oxygen binding with L-arginine in the presence of ENOs converts into nitric oxide and L-citrulline. This nitric oxide, because of this, it releases a soluble guanylate cyclase. This soluble guanylate cyclase converts the CGTP to CGMP. So because of this, it leads to relaxation or vasodilation. And here we have coming to, you can see, large increase in number of capillaries is white dots in a rat. Especially it is seen in anterior tibialis muscle that was stimulated electrically to contract for short period for 30 days. And B, you can see it's compared with the unstimulated muscle A. So A is a So B is continuously stimulated one, whereas compared with unstimulated muscle. So this is unstimulated muscle. So you can see in unstimulated muscle those white dots are absent more, whereas in stimulated muscle you can see more white dots. So this is large increase in number of capillaries when the muscle gets stimulated. So the 30 days of intermittent electrical stimulated converted predominantly fast twitch glycolytic anterior tibialis muscle to be predominantly slow twitch oxidative muscle with increased number of capillaries and decreased fiber diameter as shown. So you can see here. So what they are saying is nothing but it is unstimulated, it is stimulated. So whenever this right muscle of anterior tibialis gets stimulated, you can see more capillaries are formed. Whereas when it is unstimulated, you can see just like some are present. So that's it. By this we can complete our chapter 45 from our guidance regional circulation overview.